Hey guys, Kelade here. So with the Shadowlands pre-patch coming out next week, Blizzard I think is doing a lot of final changes, and there's been a lot of actually back and forth. Even the nerfs that we talked about in the last video, it's very questionable about what's actually going to happen. I think a lot of people don't even know. I don't even know if Blizzard actually know what's going on over there. So let's take a look at everything that's changing or that's announced either yesterday or right now today, and take a look at all of them, right? So first things first, they went ahead on the beta and they nerfed basically every single like OP legendary, I think. So when I talk about the warrior stuff, yes, it sucks that they nerfed some of the really good ones for a warrior, but just know that they most likely nerfed the crap out of everybody else's legendaries too. And we'll get into the blue post after it too. So initially they went and actually they buffed the slam one, but slam omega lol. So that's one thing. But they nerfed like this Mortal Strike one that applies classic smash effect, and the biggest thing is they nerfed the Exploiter one, which I think a lot of people like just because they remember the old days of using Exploiter in previous expansions, and they like that, and Blizzard nerfed that one, so rip. Fury, similar case, except I think actually every single Fury one got nerfed. Like there's no like buffs, like the arms one, right? The Fury of Vegeta, which is the one that gives you haste, all right, it's completely nerfed 50%. Deathmaker, which my opinion right now is the strongest one, that also got nerfed from 25% chance to a 20% chance to proc Siegebreaker. But I think the key is that they're not nerfing this part, the Siegebreaker for 5 seconds part, which the 25 to 20% nerf basically makes it so you're gonna have potentially less uptime, right? Because your rampage hits 4 times and each one of the 4 ticks can proc it. So generally at around 25% chance, right, it's very likely, I guess, or very possible that you proc it every rampage. That's not actually what happens, but it's pretty good up rate. So we'll see what happens, and if they like revert this potentially. Reckless Defense, your rampage critical strikes have a 25% chance to reduce your remaining cooldown of your recklessness and enrage regen by 2 seconds instead of 3. I do think this legendary, even if it becomes good, there's no way that it gets good initially, right? Because it's one of those legendaries that's just gonna get good later on as your character gains more stats, your character gains more crit. I think that's where this will shine. So, I mean, I'm still on the Deathmaker train right now. We'll see what happens as they buff more legendaries. Interestingly enough, on the exact same day that they did all this, right, it's not even just us. Let me actually look at rogues really quick. I'm gonna look at Subtlety, if they nerfed their legendary. They nerfed, yeah, Akari got nerfed. Wow. So this legendary, it used to be after using a Shadow Strike or Cheap Shot, your target suffers a Shadow Strike. 2 seconds later, it used to be 100% effectiveness. So you hit a Shadow Strike, another Shadow Strike hits. Then they nerfed it to 50, and now it's at 15. Because even at 50, it was too strong. So we'll see what happens with this. I don't know why the rogue versions of this legendary are so strong. Like almost, I feel like every class that I've played has some type of this, and I don't know why the rogues was so OP. I think Blizzard didn't realize how many times a rogue can use Shadow Strike, which is weird because if you just play sub rogue for like an hour, you'll be like, holy shit. You're literally in Shadow Dance the entire time, and it's Shadow Strike Central. Alright, next thing. On the same day they posted this, we are currently in the process of tuning legendaries, so in this latest Shadowlands build, you may see a number of legendary effects have had their power reduced, which is what we saw. Basically, everybody's OP legendaries got nerfed. We've recently had an internal discussion about our tuning targets for legendaries, and concluded that we were aiming too low with respect to their power. We're working through another tuning pass on all these items, and you should see further adjustments in the upcoming build. I just don't understand. That's why did they even nerf these in the first place? Like they literally nerfed them and came out with the statement in the same day. I mean, there's no like, I'm a little bit confused because there's no deadline on when they have to have like these Shadowlands patches as far as I'm aware of. Maybe they have internal stuff, but they could have just, I guess, not nerfed the legendaries. It's kind of weird to be like, oh yeah, we're nerfing them right now, but we're gonna buff them again. Okay, sure. It's weird because I almost feel like, yes, I think there was some feedback that could have led to this, but I almost feel like they made this post before the feedback even came in. It's kind of weird. I just, why even do all this nerfing stuff in the first place and get people like riled up? It's kind of weird. All right, next thing, the conduits thing. Now, initially I had a really dislike for the change, but thinking about it, it's whatever. I understand they're thinking about it at least. So when Shadowlands first came out, there wasn't like a uniform way of how every soulblind was going to have conduits and what type of conduits they had and how many of them, right? So when Shadowlands first came out, there were some soulbinds that had 3 potency conduits and then some that had 2 potency conduits. What that basically meant was whatever soulbind has 3 potency conduits, that's the one you picked because you have 3 DPS conduits, right? As opposed to the other guy that only has 2. Somewhere along the way, a while ago, Blizzard normalized it. So that way there's each soulbind has guaranteed 3 potency sockets, right? So that was a good change. That made it so like, yeah, your different soulbinds are more viable. So here, instead of saying now everybody having 3 potency sockets, now you're only going to have 2. I don't know why this would increase the flexibility of soulbinds, to be honest. I guess one aspect of it is that if you look at least for the warrior soulbinds, or I think most classes in general, right? You're most likely going to pick your covenant ability. You know, as long as they don't nerf covenant ability to complete and utter trash to where taking that covenant ability conduit actually matters. And I think in the case of like Fury, it still makes sense, right, to go Venthyr and you still take that Venthyr conduit where if there's more targets around you, your Condemn does more damage, right? Like that still makes sense. And I think for most of these covenants, that's still probably going to be the correct choice. And then second, there's always, I think, a conduit that's normalized across all of your specs. So for warriors, it should be Juggernaut for the potency aspect. And then of course, there's also then a bunch of like spec specific ones. Now, if they balance it, which on warriors, I think on a single target fight, you're most likely going to be taking Juggernaut and the Condemn one anyways. In which case, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're armed with Fury, you can use that trait. So if that's where they're going for, I kind of get it. But if that's the case, then is there even a point? Because then everybody's going to take the conduit that matches to their covenant, and then the second conduit would just be the one that works for all specs. If they make it so that's the best one, then I literally don't know what's the point of the other potency conduits, because nobody would ever use them. Why would you use a worse conduit that's also spec specific? That seems kind of weird. But I do like the fact that it opens up, you know, your 2 other sockets to be more defensive and utility focused, whether that's going to be endurance or finesse. There's actually some really, really good conduits that are in the endurance finesse category, but because obviously everybody wants the highest DPS, right? You're going to shy away from that. I do like that this forces you to get one of each, hopefully. But I just think the balancing the conduits, it's a little bit weird. It almost feels like they're looking at the conduit system and going, okay, we want that to be there, but to be honest, we don't really want to balance that anymore. So why don't we just make it so it's an easy choice for everything? In which case, why even have it, I guess? I mean, we're slowly getting to the point where you just pick the best stuff and it works out. And if it turns out that the best choice works out for all specs, great. That seems to be the point that we're moving towards. But if the same choice works out for all 3 specs, was there even a point for the system in the first place? So I don't know. My answer is probably not. Like, why do we even have it? But okay. And then of course we have the overall PTR patch notes. So, and just to be clear, right, there is currently retail, which is what you're currently playing on for BFA. There is PTR for the pre-patch, which is what's going to be coming on the next reset, right? Everything there is going to be here, and that's what these notes are for. And these are the official notes, right? And then there's of course the beta, which is also a different build. And you guys will see this too, like some of the stuff don't even match up to what's on here. And that's kind of annoying, I guess. And I don't know why it's not matching up. Maybe some miscommunication on Blizzard's end on like what changes should have happened. If there are things that were left out, people are not updated, this post is wrong, what's on the beta is wrong. We'll find out really quickly. But the biggest thing is a lot of the stuff that's on here has been covered by, you know, my previous videos about all of the changes, right? And a lot of them are the same. Like all this stuff about like new abilities that we get, that's all happening. Of course, the one thing I want to point out is that like instant that it happens, right? Your corruption shit's not going to work. Your battle shout is only going to be a 5% buff. And then of course, there's going to be this 5% variance on your DPS, on your non-periodic damage or healing abilities. The other thing also is, I'm actually kind of curious. So you're going to get knocked down to level 50. And then level 60 will be the cap after Shadowlands, right? Or while Shadowlands is happening. It's funny because right now you can still use the scrolls that give you the class buffs at 50. I'm actually curious how much percentage it gives you, because it didn't nerf that to be lower. It'd be kind of funny if for a small period of time that the tomes are actually stronger than the class buffs. I don't think it'll happen, but I just want to make sure Blizzard's aware of that they should nerf that if they need to. Okay, for word specifics, you guys obviously can check out the previous videos I've done on all the new abilities. there's nothing big that's happening here, or nothing like that we're not aware of right now. Arms, it's all the same. But the question here is Fury, because interestingly enough, Fury actually has changes on here that's different than what we saw in the last patch. And you know, they cover it here on Wildhead too, so I might look at that instead. But the biggest thing is they did buff Bloodthirst and Rage and Blow a little bit, right? I think it's like, for both of them, it's more than 10%. I think the first one's like, what, 11%? And this one is, I don't know, 15 maybe, something like that. You guys can obviously divide that by yourselves if you really want, curious. The other thing is Single-Minded Fury. So we were at 8%. And then in the last recent update to the beta, it got bumped up to 10%. Now on these patch notes, it's now at 12%. So just for some perspective, at 8%, I still felt that it was weaker. Now this is feeling, because we're not all done simming yet. So that's feeling worse. So I would have put at 10%, it was probably pretty close. And then the fact that if they are going to leave it at 12%, it is actually likely that we go Single-Minded Fury, just a heads up. Obviously, once the patch comes out and then everything gets updated to, you know, 9.0.1 values, we can very easily sim our gear and see what happens. But yeah, just heads up that Single-Minded Fury has now been buffed additionally, right? Outside of what we thought even a couple days ago. And then, yeah, there's a small buff to Whirlwind, sure. Doesn't do that much damage anyways. And then the other thing, so the other thing that's weird about this and why you're like, okay, wait, is Single-Minded Fury actually buffed? Because the problem is some of the stuff that you're seeing on this patch notes does not line up with what's currently changed on the beta. And so one thing is that Single-Minded Fury. And then the second thing is the other talent for Frothing Berserker, right? So Frothing Berserker, Rampage has a 20% chance to immediately refund 40 rage. That's what they're saying on the patch notes. But as we know, in the most recent beta update, this got nerfed to refund 20 rage, right? And if you're curious, yes, that's still the case. If I look at it right now in the beta, it's 20 rage, right? If I look at Single-Minded Fury on the beta, it's going to be 10% damage increase. So the question is, one is nerfed and the other is buffed. And then what's eventually going to be the correct one, right? I would assume, to be honest, whatever is in the official patch notes and in the actual stuff that's coming out in 9.0.1 is safer to be what's, you know, the thing that's going forward. But it is kind of weird, and it's also very possible that they just forgot to edit Frothing Berserker on the patch notes and that it actually should be the nerf value. I mean, we'll see when it happens, if it's nerfed or not. Maybe it doesn't get nerfed, but it still gets nerfed when Shadowlands itself comes out. We'll have to see. There's no way I can tell you until the thing actually happens. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday. Hopefully that's a good update on things that's happening, things that might seem like they're happening, like the legendary changes, and then Blizzard's pulling back, changes the conduits. But yeah, if you guys want to use your corruption one last time, you know, get in it, right? If you like playing this iteration of Arms Warrior where you're basically feeling like a Fury Warrior because you're spamming your abilities like crazy, play now before Tuesday hits, because you're gonna lose all of that haste. But yeah, as always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. Yeah.